Hello and warm welcome the audience to New Generation Women, and I'm Janine Fanzenos. I specifically chose the audio version for today's topic as I believe that audio has a more intimate quality, and our topic today is very personal and very intimate and extremely powerful. We talk about the superpower of women. We talk about intuition, and not just intuition. We go one step further and we talk about science and intuition. Now, I'm not the one who comes today with facts and figures. My approach to intuition was not so much a free will approach, but more a matter of getting back to life. I therefore come with lots of stories and experiences, but my guest shares the facts that maybe some of you guys need to hear to trust that we do have a superpower as women, particularly as female leaders, and that is this power that we are so needing in the world right now. Why? Let me answer the question with my favorite quote of Albert Einstein. The intuitive mind is a sacred gift, and the rational mind is a faithful servant. We have created a society that honors the servant and has forgotten the gift. So let's dive into the topic and go straight to North America to my interview guest. She has lived and worked in India, the US, Germany, Denmark, and China, and in further 40 countries. She is now global head of organizational growth at Siemens Energy, focused on transformation, culture, inclusion, and diversity, and leadership development. Hello and warm welcome, Dr. Nandini Linton. Hello. Good morning to you.
Lovely to be speaking with you today. Thank you.
You know, you have such an impressive background. It would have taken me ages to share all your professional achievements, but we will touch on a few points during the interview, and the audience, you can see Nandini's background in the text box below, so that's not gotten lost. My first impulse was to ask you, don't you want to sleep the rest of your life when I see all your achievements? And then my second, I thought like, boy, when did she that? Oh boy, wow, that was amazing. And my second impulse was, with such a strong intellectual background, where and when did intuition come into your life?
What a great question. And honestly, I stumbled into it because every life has turning points and they're often not pleasant. And what I learned from them was, looking back, I actually saw things coming and I refused to listen. And that's when I got the lesson to listen better to the voice in myself. And, you said in the beginning beautifully, this is a secret power of women and of women leaders. And on the one hand, that's true. On the other hand, your quote was from Einstein, a man. And much of the research has come from men. And many of the examples are, this is actually a human gift. But what has happened as we have come to value so much the servant, as Einstein said, to overvalue, I would say, our linear rational thinking, that has increasingly been seen as a male quality, and this other thing, which is not explainable, not rational, has been seen as a woman's thing. And so actually it's a human gift. And nonetheless, as women, I do think many of us are more ready to use it. And we really should, because it makes such a difference.
You said in the beginning, and I was just thinking, I think lots of women are thinking right now, oh, when did I not listen to my intuition? And were so mistakenly seen that, I was wrong, I should have listened. And we all know that, we all had those experiences. Do you have a concrete example where you felt, shoot, I should have listened?
Well, I mean, there are tons of small ones, right? Even today, if I'm rushing, if I'm distracted, and that's a bad thing, that always takes away from the ability to hear the voice. There's not a time that I haven't left my phone at home and I remember it when I'm on the train. And I know there was a niggle in my head as I was closing the door and I didn't take the time to pay attention. That's a really small example. Or I had a real shock in my personal life where I had dreams about what was coming. I had a voice in my head And I remember saying, oh, that's ridiculous. So clear, and I didn't listen.
I love that story because I wanted to share my story, how intuition came into my life. And as I said, it was absolutely not free will. And it was also through a dream. I had a bike accident a few years before, and I was so off my career and off everything to function. So for me, it was a matter of really life, going back to life. And I had a lot of pain. I couldn't really walk quite good. And that I had a dream that said, go back to dancing. And I wasn't even questioning where the voice would come up when I would wake up, like literally the minute, I think, or the second I have dreamt. And I had such a clear, strong voice in my dream. And I would get so angry at the voice. I wouldn't question it. I wouldn't ask it. I would get angry and say, how do you dare to say it to me? Because I cannot even walk more than 10 minutes. And I came to, it took some more time. And I came back to Germany. I was in America at that time. And one of the doctors who had gone through some similar experiences also with an accident, he knew the state I was in. And we didn't talk about symptoms and pain and stuff. We talked about dancing. And then we had so much fun. I was so happy to have fun. And he said, don't you want to go back to or come with me to dancing tonight? And I said, sure. Now I made a fool out of myself. I looked horrible. I was so not prepared for dancing, with my winter boots. It was wintertime and for salsa dancing. But I could feel somehow I was hooked. And then I took a private lesson in dancing. And that's when the spark of life came literally back into the bones of my body. And it took a few times, I had to rest. And it didn't go well the first times, but it took just a very short time that I was training 3 hours a day, 7 days a week. And I went as a granny. I was in my 30s or end of my 30s. I was on stage. And that was so clear to me. And all the very pivotal moments in my life was strongly intuitively led. And then it got my attention. And I think it's when something bad happens in your life, or we do have crisis, what people are asked to is giving it its full attention. So it's like almost when you say to the world, or when you say to your life or to your intuition, okay, now you have my attention. Now I'm listening. Before, you might have sneaked in and tried to wave and, wave the white flag and say, oh, I told you. And then suddenly something happens that can be bad. In my case, it was really life-changing. And then we are there, and then we want to explore and to know more. Did you have when you also said in your private life, then it had your full attention, and then you start to explore more? Maybe that's when you did some research, some scientific research. What is intuition actually based on? What kind of facts do we have?
Absolutely, Janine. It got my complete attention. And then I was able to hear that voice so much better. And I was also ill. I had a cancer diagnosis. I spent 3 weeks very silently in the hospital. And I think I always said I kind of reset during that time, that I learned what silence and rest can do, and how much wisdom we have in our own selves and our own bodies. And still these days, I sometimes forget it, right? It's easy to get overwhelmed and too much on screen and too distracted. And we know that takes away from our ability to hear a voice. But I would like to tell you some of the things that I've come up against, come up across, because teaching leadership, and back in the days before COVID, that usually meant me as professor in a room with, 25 male executives and maybe 2 females. I mean, this was standard for years, right? Talking senior people here. And yet I felt we have to talk about intuition. And actually it was easier than I thought, because you quoted Einstein, but they're quotes from Steve Jobs, right? Everyone loved Steve Jobs. Intuition is more powerful than intellect, says Steve Jobs. Bill Gates,
didn't know that.
The geek talks about this. How many senior leaders talk about their gut instincts? Yeah. Stockbrokers talk about their gut instinct. And this is one way of talking about intuition. And science has actually shown we really do have a second brain in our gut, right? So that's just one of the multitude of kinds of things. I learned that the US military was researching intuition because they realized it helps you make quick decisions, in that case, that can save people's lives, right? Mm-hmm. So this is being taken more and more seriously. But let me just add, the broadest thing that has fascinated me is that as the work on brain scans got more and more precise, what we now know, multiple, academic researchers on this, we know that our brain has already made a decision 0 to 10 seconds before we know that we've made a decision. And they've proved it because researchers looking at a brain scan can predict what the person is going to decide before the person has decided.
Wow. And, that makes so much sense. As I said, I always came with stories. I always came out of the box into a box without knowing actually what I was doing, but I could see the quickness. When I was working a lot with board of directors to get them ready for that time for media and for press conferences, for internal big team meetings, I mostly had no clue really what their, particularly when they came from technology companies, what their craft really was and what their really product really was. I wasn't so much interested in all those products. And seeing so many, but I came on the spot. I was very alive. And I could just so easily, from my intuitive mind, so easily bring the dots together and tell them and prioritize and sort it out differently, that in the end, they would always leave the studio and tell me, you have such an analytical, strong mind. And I said, no, that's absolutely not my analytical mind. It's my intuitive mind. And the point is, and I learned that later, and also I had to pick up on that line. I came back from America. I started in a very free flow. I had nothing. I didn't want to prove anything. I just happened to jump in there, and I got very successful. It was just something that came easily to me. I had no need to prove. I had my own will or push something through, no agenda. I wasn't afraid. I didn't have any authority issues. It was a lot of fun for me to work with them. I loved that they were quick thinkers. I loved that they had no defense mechanism. So we had a really good time. And in this good time of flow, nothing was holding me back from an intuition that is already in everybody of us. But I was not blocking it. I was not holding it back out of human reasons, fear, whatever we have, or trying to prove that we can do it, or being afraid we are not enough. All those things jump in and put layers around us. And then the strong intuition is almost broken. It's like the sun cannot shine through if we have too many clouds. And after that experience, I had a few very negative experiences that people would sometimes ridicule, men, maybe sometimes also women, very tough, masculinized female leaders, the feminine qualities. And I could see that over time, and I wasn't even realizing it in the business world. I was not mentioning it so much anymore. I was pushing it away. I felt more ashamed of it. I heard sometimes, oh, Janine is, so creative, chaotic, but we like her, or a paradise bird. And all those extreme strong qualities and gifts that I would bring in, I would shuffle them away. And only like 2 years maybe ago, I started to say, hey, where are you? Where is your power? You lost so much of your superpower. And one of my superpowers is definitely intuition. And I literally had to go back to my original confidence to align with this. And I know so many women when I was coaching them, and they told me, I intuitively feel, I say, yes, say this to your boss, say this. And they would very often say, no, I'm not saying this, it's ridiculous. I will not say to my boss, I have a gut feeling. While men had absolutely no problem in sharing what you just said, sharing about the strengths of this. And this was a kind of a sad experience that I had in the more intellectual and the business world. What was your experience? Maybe you have a similar one or very different experience.
So I really hear what you're saying, Janine, because if you as a woman say, well, I have an intuition, or even I have a gut feeling, because this has been kind of labeled the female thing, It's easy for others to poo-poo it, but I think that what we can do, and this has worked very well for me when I don't feel comfortable just naming it, is to say, I don't know, guys, I really, there's a question that I think we have to look at, or are we missing something? I have this funny feeling, and to talk it through. And then the response is very much as you described at the beginning, that people say, oh, she has such an analytical mind. Yeah, well, it didn't come from that analytical mind. But to phrase things as a question, to say, we need to look at this other option. Have we considered this and that? I think that lets us build on our strength, even if we're in a situation where we're uncomfortable to name it, because this is about using our brains to the full capacity. And to do that, we have to be able to listen to the intuitive voice as well. How we then share it with other people, I think, depends on the situation.
And also, feeling the confidence, like with my business partners, and, of course, they're about consciousness and raising consciousness. But when it comes back to business, we all fall back into old traps. So I could see that with the male around me, they had high intentions. And when it came to pure business, it was all the old way again. And I could feel that, and I felt uncomfortable. I felt this is not right. This is not integrity speaking. And not that they did it consciously or willingly, or, they just felt into the old trap, like we always do every day again. As you said, we are stressed and we forget about the flow, and we are pushing the flow and the river. And I would point out, if you're going this way, this will happen. And I was a little bit milder in the beginning, and it exactly happened the way. And then I pointed it out again. And of course, I was called uncomfortable. I was called, oh, way too complex. Oh, Gillian, just do it. It was always kind of uncomfortable when I came in, because I was pointing my finger to something that they just didn't want to think about. It was just the old way was more comfortable. But then when a few projects turned out the way that I intuitively felt that they would turn out the way, then I got the intention. But also I myself got the intention. I would never let them tell me again, this and this. It was my own confidence that jumped back in. And not that I got angry. I was just confident enough with all those experiences that next time I said, okay, guys, last time you didn't listen. I didn't speak up loud enough. This time I speak up loud enough. If you do it, I'm out. Or, I'm very clear, or I'm doing something humorously about it. And I think this is what was so important for me, to remember that I have a superpower. I'm believing that everybody has it. I believe that women have it even stronger than men, that actually this is really our superpower, our intuitive intelligence. But because of conditioning, because of being in a male world, mostly as female leaders, and because of fearing maybe, like in my case, too complex, too complicated, too deep, just do it, I would shut up. I would silence my voice more. And this has changed. I think this is the big change. I don't silence my inner voice anymore.
I bet that what you've just described has happened to so many women. And
I hope so, yes.
We know something, we either keep it to ourselves or we say it and don't push it to make sure it's heard. And then exactly what we saw was going to go wrong goes wrong, right? Mm-hmm. And I think that this is often also what hopefully then strengthens us to say, okay, next time I really do need to be louder.
Mm-hmm. How, when many women will ask, okay, I get that. Okay, I remember. I think becoming conscious is one first step. Also, maybe listening to a few more talks on intuition. There are many out there on TED Talk talking about intuition. It's almost old-fashioned and becomes sexy again in this time, where we are reaching our limits and we can see that we have reached limits. In order to expand, there needs to be broader other perspectives, broader ways, other forms of intelligence. And the intuitive intelligence, spiritual intelligence, creative intelligence, instinctive intelligence, we have so many, are just a few of them that can enhance the intellectual power and the power of logic and reason. when it comes to our listeners who say, oh boy, yeah, I understand what you're talking about, how can I actually go and reconnect back? For both of us, we had a shaking of life. I was lying literally in bed for quite a while, you too. I needed to listen and to receive. I had so much headache because I was falling on my head. My head did literally not function. So like someone who got blind, he needs to develop other senses. Sometimes they have a very good feeling sense, or they just know things because they are blind. They cannot use their eyes anymore. And I think that was for me the shift. I couldn't use my thinking mind so much anymore because it was just literally hurting my head, which is it's a metaphor actually. But that's kind of cruel, and it doesn't happen to everybody, and hopefully it doesn't. What would you say and give further as a mentor and as a coach to young people and to people who are really interested, and to women using the superpower again, how to connect back to something that is already in us?
It's essentially such simple things, and often simple things are difficult, right? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. If we phrase it as, how do I get in a position to hear that voice more? That means I need to listen to it. And I can only do that if I spend time by myself, if I spend time in silence, if I observe, to use that word, if I'm mindful, meaning I'm aware, I'm observing myself. And for me, it's very helpful to write, to take notes, or to sound fancier than I am, to keep a journal, to write about how I'm feeling, what I'm sensing, and then to kind of keep track. If something happens where I think, wow, I knew that, I could feel that coming, that helps me, because otherwise it's so easy. As I was saying, we have so much work and so much distraction and so many things to do for other people. And it's sometimes so much more comforting to, I'm going to turn on the television, or I'm going to listen to something while I go for a walk, rather than staying with myself in the silence. But that's the only way I know to help myself tune in, literally, right? Mm-hmm. And same goes for dreams. I try to to at least make a short note to remember what it was, and just kind of keep track of, where is my mind going? What could that message be? Mm-hmm. And these things sound simple. I find them sometimes very difficult.
They are so difficult because we are living in an environment where we are always almost compulsive thinkers. Like the stronger we think, the harder we think, the better the solutions are, which is so counterproductive to the solution. And although we know, we just don't know otherwise, or we go back into automatic behavior. And I, with the women I have worked, I always go to meditation and to mindfulness techniques and breathing techniques. And that's not very sexy because, you're not getting the quick results. Maybe you just start to silence the chatter in your mind. You clean your thinking up, and then it starts to become calmer in your mind, or you're more observant. And then you're also more observant to the voices that speak to you. They're negative voices, and the same, and also where the intuitive voice lies. So that's a lot of preparation, actually. And as I said, it's not very sexy in the beginning, particularly when we need or want to have quick results, or when you have women who are leading and have young children and have full life and family. That is really hard to get that time set. For myself, because I was forced to take care of my intuition and forced to take care of other ways of working. To have my morning praxis became my haven. And maybe just saying this and describing it, how much it values or brings value to my life, I just couldn't do without anymore. And it has just released also so much fear, because I always come to my altar, to my haven, kind of with a white piece of paper, literally. I started with writing my morning pages. And morning pages is you clean up your thinking, you get everything on paper that's, almost in the way, all the pieces and bits as the details. And then sometimes I come with a lot of questions. Mostly I come with lots of questions to my intuition, to my guidance, to my inner leader. So then I get a little bit quieter, and then I do a prayer for myself. It's like an affirmative prayer. It doesn't mean that I'm religious. I just pray then to something that is bigger than my intellect, or to me as a small woman, to a higher force that I totally believe in, that we have. And then I leave the paper, and I leave it, and I don't wait for answers to come. But I know after a while, and after so many years, the answers come so quickly now. And then I go into meditation, and I really tune into this bubble of nothingness. But this is a very warm feeling, good feeling bubble. And I do breathing meditation, and sometimes just following my breath, very simple, getting distracted 100 of times, going back, doing a mantra sometimes also. And then after 15, 20 minutes, I come out, and then I really am in a different state. And with this situation, I come with very important decisions I have to make, or important turns I have to make for my business, or for my creation process or program process. And also, when I have difficult tender issues, I always would turn up in my morning practice and know that I'm taken care of. I know I'm protected. I know I'm safe. I know I'm guided. And this has become such a strong anchor. And of course, in this whole tender time of the global pandemic, and everything is shaking and so intense and so confusing at times. If I would have relied on the worldly affairs, I would have been so lost, and would have lost so much energy and been so exhausted. Doesn't mean that I wasn't, but I could pull myself back quicker and quicker and quicker. And this, over time, this anchor that has built is I would like to miss it for a minute, but it's my real confidence. It's where my real confidence lies. And there's a beautiful saying, and I think this is a sentence that we can always say in the beginning, and from there, a whole other world opens. As a student and teacher of A Course in Miracles, there's a saying: either it is love or it is a call for love. Very simple. There's nothing in between. So I repeat it again: either it is love or it is a call for love. So when I'm rushing around, or when I'm trying to, making myself crazy, or pushing myself, or having deadlines, or having a week at the moment that's way too full on, and fearing that I have way too much work again, then I can feel almost like I try to fix automatically something in the outside. And I stop for this second and say, okay, this is a call for love, Janine. Turn your energy inward and give yourself some compassion. Turn your energy inward and be really present right now. Stop. And then you realize all the stress is happening in my mind. It's in my mind. And when I realize this and turn inward, and just a few seconds of stop and give yourself kindness and compassion, I can already feel the shifts. Of course, there was a lot of practice, but I believe that by applying this, because when we are hungry or empty or rushing or pressuring, we get very exhausted. And this is why I think intuition is a superpower for women, because women feel that we are exhausting ourselves, particularly in businesses also, or in leadership positions. So we need to have other resources that regenerate us and that come quicker. By this awareness of stopping ourselves from pushing and rushing and making it so hard on ourselves and others, and becoming aware of, is it love or is it a call for love? That is something that is extremely shifting and powerful in a few seconds. And writing it on a post, and having that post on a mirror and on your computer and in your purse, that is also helping to remember, what am I doing actually here? And then intuition is right there. I mean, it's just waiting for us all the time to help, to assist, to support. And once we are surrendering to that, and we're really open and ready to experience it and say, okay, you got me, you guys got me here in the interview, then it is so rewarding. And because we're in a time of change and transformation, those things don't take so much time anymore. The rewarding time at the moment is that when we are opening up to transformation, the changes inside and outside are so much quicker than they were before. What is your experience and how you feel how transformation inside happens? Do you also feel that it's so much quicker than it was years before because we're in such an intense transformational time?
I don't know about that, but what I do know is that people are, on the one hand, confronted more quickly, I think, with challenges which can lead them to look inside. It's kind of when you run out of all other options, then even the hardest one looks inside, right?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And I think what you were just describing is important. When I can, I have my morning routine, and I'm aware there are times I just don't manage. And having even said that, what I try to remind myself is that we all have time for a pause, for 2 full breaths. Before you make a decision, before you send an email that might backfire, before you decide whether you're going to follow a stray thought or not in a meeting, should you speak, we all have time to twice take in a really full breath, hold it, let it go, hold it. And this is often enough, I find, to take away that adrenaline, to let me stop for just long enough to remember where I am, as you said, to then realize how much is in my head and to go back into my body and try to feel what's true, what's really going on here. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So everything that you described, I think, is super important to help, and not everyone can do it. And I don't know many people who can do it all the time, but don't give up. If there are these smaller ways to bit by bit build in. Yeah. And I do think that if you're open to that, that's where change can come quite quickly, because transformation is one of those things, isn't it? It can take years, or it can happen in a nanosecond. If you suddenly see something differently, you suddenly get a different perspective and think, oh my goodness, no wonder that happened, or no wonder they reacted that way, or how could I have been so blind to that? And that, I believe, really changes us. And there is also an acceptance, and I believe this so strongly out of experience, the way that I show up for something, my inner state when I go into a meeting, a presentation, a difficult conversation, whatever it is, if I have prepared my inner state to be good, what happens is not just so much better, but very often so good it surprises me, as opposed to when I rush into something. And I think this kind of thing is also discussed, when executives learn communication, this gets talked about, right? Your audience reacts to your inner state. We all send messages that we're unaware of sending and that the hearer is unaware of picking up, but this is how we go into resonance. So yeah, I do think that people are slowly becoming much more willing to hear these things and to also realize that they are important gifts. Some people may say they're tools, but I think gift is the word, and we have to pay attention to them.
Absolutely. That's a beautiful ending. That's just a beautiful ending. Thank you so much, Nandini. Thank you so much for being on the talk show. And I wish you an enlightening day with lots of intuitive insights and a very soulful rest of your day. My day ends and your day is just starting, I think. And also to the audience, I wish you guys a really soulful and insightful day. And listen, guys, really listen, because there's this, it was just coming to me that I said, well, we always want to be in love. We want to be, we are looking to be in love, or we are in long marriages, and then being in love is different. And I thought, like, when I sit at my altar or my place, my little haven, I'm always in love because I'm going inside, and I do feel a loving quality inside. And that's such a beautiful feeling. And it makes me so much more independent sometimes to seek love outside, but have those sweet little moments in the morning and be in love, connected with the love that is inside. And I know that sounds corny, but it has a very sweet quality. So I wish this for you guys. Have a beautiful rest of your day, wherever you are, and talk to you soon. Bye.